Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now this week we're going to be taking a look at another company in the MJ space. It operates here in Canada and it does have some exposure in the US as well, which is really exciting. The company name is Hightide and they actually just reported Q4 and year-end earnings recently here, so I think it's definitely worth a look. Now before we get into the video, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We just hit 200 subscribers, so I'm really excited to see that growing. My goal is to obviously get up over 1,000 within the year here, and you guys are definitely helping me on my way. In addition to that, if you're currently holding Hightide or there's any other MJ stocks you'd like me to talk about, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. These videos definitely seem to have hit a good spot in the YouTube market and they're getting a lot of attention. So as long as you guys are happy to keep watching, I'm happy to keep making them. And on a side note, if there's anything I've missed in my analysis, feel free to share that as well. It's definitely hard to capture all elements of a company in a 20 or 30 minute video. Auxly was a good example of that. There's definitely some stuff I missed in my initial analysis, and I'm actually going to be releasing a second video on Auxly after Q4 and year-end are out to address some of those points. Now without further ado, let's jump right into the video and talk about Hightide. Hey guys, so as promised, today we're going to be taking a look at Hightide Inc. Now this is a company that's involved in the MJ retail space, so both traditional brick and mortar retail locations and online presence in Canada primarily, the United States, and some international exposure. So this one's really exciting, not to mention they just came out with Q4 and year-end earnings on March 2nd, so it's definitely been in the news this week. Now if we look at a one-day chart, you can see it was trading as high as 73 cents here, and it's downtrended throughout the day, landing or closing right about the 65-cent mark. If we zoom out to a 1 week, you can see that it did actually have a bit of a run going into earnings here. As we moved through February, late February, it ran up right up to that 73-cent high. And it has pulled back a little bit. So if you are looking to get involved in this stock, this might be an attractive entry point. If you pull out to a 6 month, you can see it's definitely been on a tear up from the 20 cent kind of range over the 60 cent. So it's gone up about threefold since mid-January, but it definitely has come back a little bit since that earnings release. Now we're taking a look at the ticker symbol here, HITIF, but this stock also trades on the Canadian Venture Exchange under the ticker symbol HITI. And on that exchange, obviously due to currency, it's trading at about 83 cents. So either way, this is a penny stock, and this one is definitely one that I'm excited about if you're looking to get into the retail space or have some exposure to MJ in a retail capacity. Now in terms of video flow, we're going to go through Hightide overview in terms of what the company does, the various different brands and go-to-market strategies that they employ. And then we're also going to take a look at a few recent news releases, including Q4 earnings, some of their merger acquisition kind of talk, and then close out the video with my own personal analysis on where I think this company is headed and whether or not I'm going to be purchasing shares. I currently do not have any position in Hightide, but as mentioned in the open, this is definitely one that I'm interested in and I think does have a very attractive value proposition. You can see right now it's sitting just north of $400 million US. Now on the Canadian side, that would mean we're just north of 506 million, so about a $500 million market cap in terms of Canadian dollar. So it is a little bit larger market cap than some of the previous videos we've done on things like Auxly, Valens, WheatMD, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's overpriced. It may be worth that, and that's what we're going to explore in this video. So if we jump over to the Hightide website here, you can see their story, and I'll start out quickly just with a summary of what the company does. So they've got over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, and this has really positioned Hightide as a leading enterprise operator in Canada, Europe, and the United States. And that's exciting to me. I've talked a lot about US legalization on a federal scale, and it's good to see that this company is already positioned to capitalize on that change. Now, Hightide was founded in 2009, and they have a portfolio of companies that really dominate the Canadian retail market and the online marketplace for MJ and MJ products. They've spent the last decade developing intimate understanding of MJ consumers and a suite of retail experiences to service their interest, which uniquely position Hightide for this international expansion through the emerging legal markets. Now, if we scroll down the page here, we're going to talk about their brands in a little bit more detail and kind of compare and contrast the feel of each of these customer touch points. But I did want to run through this just quickly so you can see the scale and the scope of High Tide's operations. So they have Canna Cabana, Kush Bar, New Leaf, Meta, which was a big merger that we'll talk about later in the video, Grass City, CBD City, Valiant, and Famous Brands. Famous is another one that we're going to look at. This is a very unique and I think interesting topic that's yet to come to fruition. Now, this is a page from their most recent investor deck, and I like this one because it really lays out kind of the downstream markets and the verticals that they've associated themselves with. So if you break it down here, you can see Canna Cabana and Kush Bar. They both operate in the retail banner here, and they sell MJ and MJ accessory in a brick and mortar format. So these are stores where you can go in, you can purchase the flower, the product, the derivatives itself, along with all of the supplementary or accessories that go along with that kind of an activity. Now, Smoker's Corner only sells accessories. Now, again, this is brick and mortar retail, but you cannot buy the actual MJ at these locations. And then Grass City, again, is a retail outlet, but this operates online. Now, it's headquartered in Amsterdam, and it's actually the world's premier online store for smoking accessories and MJ lifestyle products. Now, we'll talk about an acquisition that High Tide has made towards the end of the video here that really bolsters that online presence. But as of right now, Grass City is the #1 in the world for this type of activity. In addition to the retail channels, they also have a wholesale division. So RGR, which is a premier distributor and manufacturer of MJ accessories and lifestyle products. And then Famous Brands is a global manufacturer and distributor of celebrity licensed MJ accessories and lifestyle products. So this is really interesting because they're getting a lot of big name and marketing contracts up in place for people that are well liked and well known in the celebrity community that are part of this lifestyle and partake in MJ as a hobby or a passion. Now, this slide really lays out the company's vision statement, their strategy, and their goals, both on a short and long term. So in terms of the vision, High Tide is meant to provide a full spectrum of best-in-class products and services for MJ consumers while growing organically and through acquisitions, which we'll talk about, to become the world's premier retail-focused and vertically integrated enterprise. So they really attribute their strategy to 3 key components or pillars. Differentiation, so they're going to focus on high-quality retail outlets, corporate and franchise opportunities, loyal customers and strong brand identification, margin capture through vertical integration, and then optimized operation in terms of manufacturing and distribution. Second point here is accretive growth. So they're going to look at organic initiatives within their company, but they're also open to asset acquisitions and corporate transactions. So Meta was a good example of kind of a merger they've partaken in. And then we're going to talk about an additional acquisition like we mentioned towards the end of the video here. Finally is continuous R&D, so research and development. They're really going to look at consumer trends, different manufacturing opportunities, customer education, peer monitoring, so looking at what other companies are doing in the industry, and then obviously government regulation, especially as it pertains to international and US expansion. So at this point, their short-term goals are really to get a strong retail presence in all Canadian provinces, which they're doing very well so far, continue to construct and open more MJ retail stores, and hire and build their team of talented people in preparation for this big expansion. On a longer term, they're looking to build great brands, play a key role in shaping world-leading Canadian MJ industry, and then obviously deliver shareholders industry-leading ROI or return on investment with premium multiples compared to other public companies. So that's great to see as a shareholder or prospective shareholder. Now, in terms of the specific brands, we're going to take a look at 2 of their different main brands that are already up in operation to kind of compare the feel. Then we're going to look at one of their future prospects or ideas, and then we're going to take a look at how the retail presence plays out. Now, I did want to point out that this is as of December 2019, so the data here is a little bit outdated. But what we're trying to see here is really the look and feel of these stores rather than some of the specific numbers here. So you can see at this point they did have a presence in 5 of the provinces in Canada. And if you take a look at the picture here, Canna Cabana, it's very open, it's really inviting, and it really gets customers in there and interactive with the product. Now the other thing worth mentioning here is they've centralized all their logistics, so they really cut down on some of that overhead and management at the store location. They're trying to target mid-sized stores, so about 1,500 to 2,500 square feet, and they actually have the highest average rating by independent customer reviews among all retail chains. So people really enjoy this experience. I live obviously in Calgary, Alberta, and I've seen Canna Cabanas around. I've been in them myself, and they have a really cool feel to them. Now, as of their most recent quarter, Q4 and year end, they actually have 72 total retail locations among all their brands. And they did just open a new Canna Cabana location in Banff, Alberta, which is a massive tourist destination for international travelers. So that one should be really exciting as well. Now, the second retail concept I wanted to look at here is Kush Bar. So this one has obviously quite a different feel to it. You can see it's a lot more sophisticated, kind of modern or chic in here. And I think that's important to really appeal to all different types of customers and different demographics that partake in the MJ subculture. So next up is Famous MJ Cafe, and this is actually a future concept. So the idea here is once legalization of consumption lounges is approved, kind of like a hookah lounge or a bar for alcohol, stuff like that. Hightide is actually looking to launch these cafes where people can go in and enjoy MJ with their friends, family, maybe get some food, listen to music, and it's really an experience where they partake in the actual use of MJ itself rather than just going into retail and a transaction-based interaction. So this one is definitely interesting. I know there's a lot of hype around this and a lot of people that are really looking to get into this space. As of right now, this is not really available from a regulation standpoint, but I definitely think this is going to take off very fast as soon as it does get that green light. So the final prong of their approach here is actually online retail, and I definitely think this is the way the world's going. If we look back at the pandemic situation here, you can see a lot of people have really shifted to that retail online purchase, whether it's through Amazon or Shopify or some smaller sites like that. People really enjoy shopping when they want and how they want from home. So Grass City is the world's #1 MJ accessory and lifestyle e-retailer. You can see here they have a 20-year history as an online store. They have 6 million site visits per year, 65,000 orders per year, and over 34,000 certified online reviews. So an absolute massive presence. And keep in mind, this is from an outdated deck. So these numbers have obviously improved exponentially from there. In addition to that, they've also got a large US customer base. So about 90% of their orders are actually from customers in the United States. So I think this is a massive foot in the door in terms of US legalization. Order fulfillment. Now obviously they can't sell actual MJ product in the US yet, but as soon as they're able to, and that's federally legalized, a lot of people already have the habit of going to Grass City for their MJ needs, and I don't see that changing drastically as soon as they're able to layer that in or add that product line. Now in terms of social media or social impact, you can see here over 250,000 followers between Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, 75 million page views per year, and over 34 million unique users in Grass City forums. So people are talking about this company, they know what it is, and they're going there over and over again, whether it's through their social media platforms or the website itself. So now that we've taken a quick look at what Hightide does, their different business models and approaches to retail, I wanted to take a look at their most recent financial statement, which like I mentioned just came out on March 2nd here, so it's very recent. You can see the headline, 2020 financial results feature a 166% increase in revenue and record EBITDA of $8 million. So considering this was a very difficult year for retail, and the CEO actually calls this out here, despite the global slump in retail sales associated with the pandemic, and thanks to the tireless efforts of our team, we closed the year with approximately $8 million in EBITDA. So that's phenomenal. And just like a lot of other industries in the world, this was a very difficult year to get foot traffic into stores, both through actual government regulation and just people's general feeling of uncertainty. So the fact that they were actually able to have a record year in this type of condition or climate, I think really speaks to their brand and their staff in terms of their ability to capitalize on this opportunity. So in terms of the actual financial highlights here, you can see that fourth quarter revenue is up to 25 million or 118%. and yearly revenue was 166% higher than 2019 and landed just north of $83 million. Now, we're going to talk about this Meta Growth Corp merger in a second here, and you did see that on the initial brand slide. But please note that none of these quarterly results actually include any of the contribution from the Meta merger. So this is going to be over and above and on top of what we see here, because that acquisition actually closed after the quarter ended. Now, gross profit was up 112% quarter over quarter, so just under 9 million for Q4, and increased 172% for the year, so just about $31 million in gross profit. And if you do the calculation there, you can see that gross profit margin actually increased and is sitting just under 40%. So that's phenomenal for a retailer, and really healthy to see that again they're able to improve those margins despite this really unique and challenging year for the retail environment. EBITDA here we see was called out in the header, but fourth quarter came in at 3.6 and $8 million of EBITDA for the year. So that's really encouraging. And if you do the math on that one, you can see that 45% of their EBITDA actually came through in Q4. So that exponential ramp up is really encouraging as we move into fiscal 2021. So the next 2 points here I think are very interesting and definitely worth taking a second look at. So they break down their revenue in terms of geography and segment. And this is particularly important as we start to look at US and international expansion. So $20 million or $21 million of their revenue came from Canada, whereas only $4 million came from the United States. So seeing as the United States population is about 10 times that of Canada, if they were able to get the same type of traction once legalization takes place, I think it's pretty reasonable to see about a $200 million of revenue coming from the United States alone without much organic or accretive growth. And then in terms of international revenue, this came in at $200,000. So they've really just scratched the surface here. And this one's a big opportunity as well. Now, if we look at full year numbers, you can see 68 million came from Canada, whereas 14 million came from the United States. And in terms of percentage, it's about 16 to 17% of total revenue that's coming from the United States. So again, I see this as a major opportunity here. Not that there won't be competition or new entrants, but I think particularly with the online presence, people are really going to go where they feel comfortable and where they've already built that brand rapport. And I think High Tide is definitely in a good spot to capitalize on that one. Now, in terms of segment here, you can see that 23 million of revenue was generated by retail. Only 2.2 million came from wholesale. So wholesale is definitely a small portion of their business. It's about 10% of their actual operations. And if we look at the full year, you can see 75 million was retail, 8 million from wholesale. So again, pretty close to that 10% level. Now, as of October 31st, they had 7.5 million in cash. They've since done a bought deal or a finance raise, and they're now sitting upwards of 38 million in terms of cash as of today. Now, the final point on this page is just subsequent events to quarter end. We'll talk about some of these in more detail, but I did want to point out that they've now completed the acquisition or merger with Meta Growth, and this is actually what's got them up to that full portfolio of 72 branded retail locations in Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. So they definitely are delivering on that plan of getting 3-figure or 100 plus locations up and running, and that's great to see. Now, this next article is also very interesting to me. So this one came out January 25th, so about a month ago now. But High Tide has actually gone in and purchased, so they've acquired the second largest online retailer of MJ products and lifestyle equipment. So this one's called Smoke Cartel. And with this acquisition of Smoke Cartel, in addition to Grass City, you can see they now operate the number 1 and number 2, so largest and second largest e-commerce platforms for consumption accessories in the world. And they specifically call out, should the US move towards federal legalization, they're going to be positioned to capitalize on the online MJ sales immediately. So in addition to the stats we saw about Grass City, Smoke Cartel is actually one of the most searched websites in this industry or this product category, with 7 million site visits and over 110,000 orders last year. So these are people that have already gone in, they've had a relationship, they've made an interaction or a purchase through this company, and they feel comfortable there moving forward. Now, in terms of revenue for 2020, Smoke Cartel expects to report about 7.4 million. So if we think back to the 83 million that Hightide reported overall, this represents under 10% of overall revenues. EBITDA on this one is about 16%, and they currently have about $1 million in cash on hand. So this one is definitely a little bit smaller than their mainline operation. It's poised to ramp up, and the nice thing about this is when you own the number 1 and 2 position, you really take a lot of competition out of the equation because you own both of the top spots. Now, the final article I wanted to talk about is actually in relation to the acquisition of Meta Growth. So this one closed in November of 2020. So this is a couple months old. You can see that this actually closed after Q4 was released. As a result of this merger between the two companies, they're now going to be looking at close to 148 million in annualized revenue in terms of Canadian dollars. And if you add that to the Smoke Cartel annualized projections at about 7.4 million US, you're looking at close to $158 million of total annualized revenue for this company overall. And further to that, what's really exciting is because they're both retail operators, there's a lot of synergies between the two businesses, and they think about 60% of these synergies can be realized immediately. So there's going to be some substantial cost savings by going to a larger scale like this, and I think that's immediately going to help out shareholders. Now, in terms of how the actual deal worked, essentially they set up an exchange rate between the two shares, and for every 1 Meta share that someone held, they actually converted to 0.82 Hightide shares. So they've actually now merged them. There's now about 436 million shares outstanding of Hightide, and as a result of this merger, the original Meta shareholders now own about 45% of the overall outstanding Hightide shares. So it was essentially about a 50-50 merger. And based on what I've read, both groups were extremely happy to do this deal, and it passed shareholder approval with flying colors on both sides. So to wrap up the video now, you guys, I wanted to take a look back at the chart here in their market cap and talk about valuation and whether or not I think this is a good buy at current prices. So as discussed initially, this company is trading just north of $400 million US. Based on what I see here, I would be comfortable putting money in, especially after this 10% pullback today. Now, what I really like about Hightide is they really are capitalizing on two of the major tailwinds or catalysts for the MJ industry. So number one, they've got great exposure to the United States and international expansion as soon as legalization moves forward. And secondly, they've got a super strong retail presence in brick and mortar, but more importantly, online. And I think digital or e-commerce is definitely the way of the future in this industry and really all industries. So it's great to see that they've secured that number 1 and number 2 spot. And I think it will be very easy for them to integrate or adapt as soon as MJ is legalized globally or at least federally in the United States. So for those two reasons, I think this company offers a lot of upside. I'm definitely going to be looking at this seriously in the next couple of weeks. Now, if I'm looking at a 6-month here, you can see they definitely have some strong resistance around the 55-cent range. And this is on the US side of things. So that's probably where I'll be looking to enter, is maybe the 58, 59, 60 kind of price point. Realistically, in the long run, I don't think it really matters where you get into this, whether it's 55 cents, 60 or 65. If we look out and consider this stock gets up to maybe a $2 billion market cap in the next 5 years, you're still looking at a 4 to 5x from this point in time. So this is definitely one I'm going to be looking at. As mentioned, let me know your thoughts on Hightide in the comments section below if you're holding this, if you're looking at it, and please feel free to share any insights that maybe I've missed in this analysis or what you think of Hightide as a company overall. Now that's it for today's video, you guys. As always, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a great rest of your day.